Hello, welcome to Atheist Torah Study. My name is Emma, I'm your host. Atheist Torah Study is a year-long exploration of the Torah from the perspective of an atheist. We're following the Jewish text, so that's the first 5 books of the Bible. In Christian, it's the Torah in Jewish. Um, right now we're in Bereshit, so we're still in the first book of the Torah, which is Genesis. And Genesis is, the most interesting book in the Torah. I mean, it's good to start with Genesis if you're going to read the Torah because it's the book that actually kind of has a story. I mean, Exodus has a story too, but Genesis really has a story. And like whoever redacted, I mean, the redactors of the Torah, um, put together a good story. It was, well, I don't know if it's a good story. It's a story, and it's the story of a family. It's basically this. I mean, to me, like when I think about Genesis, Genesis is like the first 10 chapters are like random creation myths and random myths that people just kind of threw in there, and then it gets into the story of Abraham, like basically from Abraham to Joseph, and that's the main part of it. And it's actually the only part of the Torah that's like a really clear intergenerational family. It's what Richard Friedman calls maybe like one of the first novels. So I think that from a literary perspective, it's kind of an experiment in how to write a short story. I mean, the redactors of the Torah put together a really complicated narrative that involves several generations, and we're kind of like right in the middle of that. Right now, we're in the middle of it. This is the part about Jacob, and why is this interesting as an atheist? I don't know. I mean, as a Jew, it's interesting just because it's just Jewish tradition. This is just what Jews do. Jews read the Torah. And I guess that's what makes it kind of a religion. It's just like every religion has its sacred texts or they have their sacred places. And this is just the text that Jews use and have always used to try to create and understand their meaning of what a God is. And the God presents themselves in the Torah in lots of different ways. And we're going to get into it right away. So why don't we just jump right into the text and we'll start to meet the God and we'll meet some of the characters. And as we're like meeting the God and we're meeting the characters, we'll kind of talk about it and maybe try to understand what they were thinking and kind of mesh that with like what we think, you know. Anyways, so here goes. First, I'm going to do the blessing for Torah study. It's Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotah v'tzivanu la'asok dvrei Torah. It's basically just a blessing for Torah study, just that the Torah study goes well. So hopefully it'll go well. Vayetzei, if you want to follow me, I'm in Sefaria. Sefaria is SEFARIA.org. Sefaria.org. It's an online source for Jewish texts. Vayetzei. Jacob left Be'er Sheba and set out for Haran. So Jacob's in the middle of a journey. He's had his kind of big falling out with Esau, and then he made up. Esau and Jacob made up, and now Jacob's like he's kind of continuing on with his life. So there's a lot of backstory to Jacob. I'm not going to get into all of it because I don't have enough time, and I really want to focus on the atheist content in this Torah study. So I'm going to just kind of move forward, but feel free to read the whole Bible if you want, and you'll learn about Jacob's backstory. So Jacob left Beersheba and set out for Haran. Verse 11, he came upon a certain place and stopped there for the night, for the sun had set. Taking one of the stones of that place, he put it under his head and lay down in that place. So he used a rock for a pillow. I'm sure there's some symbolism in that. He had a dream. Now this is where it gets good. Okay, so Jacob, there's a lot of dreams in the Bible. And religious people, they like to think dreams really mean something. I'm in the middle of a psych class right now. Uh, right now we're in behaviorism, but before that there was a week on Freud, and Freud would have fun dissecting this dream, trying to understand what it means. Anyway, so Jacob had a dream. A stairway was set on the ground, and its top reached to the sky, and the messengers of God were going up and down it. And standing beside him was Hashem, who said, I am Hashem, the God of your father Abraham's house, and the God of Isaac's house. The ground on which you are lying I will assign to you and your offspring. Okay, so there's the first one. So, you can't get through very far in the Torah without meeting the God. And sometimes the God is really nice, and sometimes he's really awful, He mass murders people, he gives them skin conditions, he turns people to pillars of salt. He tells fathers to, murder their children. He's a real kick, he really is. He's a real kick. But right here, this is kind of the nice God. So here's the nice God, and I don't know if he's ever really nice or not nice. But here's the God, and the God is like talking to Jacob through a dream. So, that's not unusual in mythology. There's lots of religious traditions where people get messages in dreams. And that's, part of what makes the text keep on. I'm not sure what makes the text keep on going. That's a complicated conversation. What's made the text keep on going for hundreds and thousands of years? That's really complicated. But what makes the text go here is here's another injection of. So there's a dream, and there's a divinity in the dream, and I think everybody has dreams, and I don't know if most people think their dreams are messages from God, but I'm sure some people do. And this writer thinks that Jacob had a dream and it was a message from God. So, who is the God? Who is this God who's sending messages to Jacob? What is he? If he's a God, why doesn't he just talk to Jacob? He talked to Abraham, he's going to talk to Moses a whole bunch. Why doesn't he just talk to Jacob? Who knows? And what is the God anyways? What is Jacob really doing? Jacob, he's just having a dream. So let's, in a way, one of the ways you could look at the Torah study, if you want to look at it like I do through the lens of an atheist, is just take God out of the story, sort of like, kind of like Thomas Jefferson did. Like, take God out of the story, but keep on reading the story. And what I mean by take God out of is don't take God out, but just take the story and read it. But it, like where there's a dream, like where Jacob's having a dream, he's just having a dream. There's no God there. He might dream that there's a God, but it's his dream, That's one way you could do it. There's lots of ways to do it. But that's not even the point anyways, because there was no Jacob. There was no dream. It's the story is the narrative. The story is the vehicle for the recipient. And the recipient is you. You're the person where Jacob is really in your head. And if you're Jewish, then this is part of your tradition, So it's like Jacob maybe is a character, and he has qualities. And those qualities are something that, you might admire in a person or you might not. I mean, Jacob's very, in the story, he's presented as somebody who's kind of clever. He's also a little bit duplicitous. He's a hard worker. He's really handsome. He's driven. He's trying to improve everything. He's ethical, but he's also not ethical. So he's a complicated person. So here he is. He's having a dream, and in his dream, there's a stairway, and the stairway set on the ground, and its top reached to the sky, and the messengers of God were going up and down it. So there you go. Led Zeppelin, Stairway to Heaven. That's exactly what this is, a stairway to heaven. So I don't know. What did that mean in the ancient world? So let's say he had a dream there was a stairway. I mean, how many flights of stairs is it up to heaven in this guy's dream? I mean, is it 3 floors up? I don't know. It seems like heaven would be way up there. But another thing too, this is all just really weird. I mean, when you start to think about it. So if there's a stairway and the angels are going up and down it, why are they taking the stairs? I mean, they're angels. Why can't, I mean, the God just pops up wherever he wants to. Sometimes the God pops up and there's some angels there. Sometimes the God's a pillar of fire. Sometimes the God's a burning bush. I mean, why do the angels need stairs? I don't know. That's I'm just thinking about this because this is in his dream. So, well, it doesn't say angels. No, it doesn't. It says messengers of God. So what does that mean too? Messengers of God. I mean, you would think that I just assumed it was angels. I always forgot. Yeah, but who knows? Maybe it's George Burns, I mean, I don't know if any of you remember that movie from the 70s. It was with George Burns and John Denver, and George Burns plays God. It was the movie was Oh God. It was really dumb. It was kind of funny too. It was actually a good movie. So who's the messenger of God? Who's the messengers of God going up and down? And where? Hold it. I said heaven, but there's not. It doesn't say heaven. It doesn't say heaven. No, I'm reading this again. Now, if I read this in the Hebrew, maybe I would read something different, but it doesn't say heaven. What it says is he had a dream. A stairway was on the ground, and its top reached to the sky. So it doesn't say heaven, it just says sky. And messengers of God were going up and down on it. There's just a stairway. Is it just a stairway? Is it a stairway attached to a building? Does it have, I mean, is this, I mean, look at the time that this was in. I mean, is this a ziggurat? Maybe the person who wrote this saw some stairs that go up the side of a mountain or something. I don't know. Who knows? This is very specific though. It doesn't say heaven. It says sky. So, and it doesn't say angels. This is just what I thought. But it doesn't say angels, it just says messengers. So, in Jacob's dream, there's messengers, which could be anything. They're taking a stairway, but it doesn't really explain what kind of a stairway it is. I mean, is it just floating in the air? I mean, I guess it is, if it's... And messengers of God. And why are they going up and down? And what are their messages? This is a weird dream. Really a strange dream. Why are they going... I mean, why would they go up and down? Like they're at the shopping mall or something. I mean, I guess they're going up and down because they have messages. But it's they're messengers of God. But it doesn't say that they have messengers from God. It just says they're messengers of. But again, in the Hebrew, I mean, I think it just kind of implies that. Well, anyways, this is very interesting. Uh, Anyways, so he has this dream. It doesn't really make sense when you think about it, but it's a dream. It doesn't have to make sense. It could be like a Salvador Dali painting, right? It's a dream. So then, in his dream, and standing beside him was Hashem, the divine. So I'm not sure if this is in his dream or not. It doesn't really, it's not really clear, but I think it is. Let's see, he had a dream. There's a stairway. I don't know. The messengers were going up and down. Okay, but that says standing beside him was the divine. Let's just assume this is still in the dream. So there suddenly there's the divine. It's like it doesn't say what the divine looks like. It doesn't say which divine it was. Like at the time that this was written, we were already past a lot of the multiple gods from that time period. Now this is in the Torah, but in the Torah, which is what this book is about. This is really, you don't need to really look anyplace else. You can just look at the book. The book will tell you everything you need to know. So in this book, the book's really about the book. So the book's about the monotheist God. So in this book, which was written, a long time ago, at that time there were lots of other gods, I mean, I don't know why anybody would have any god. What, from my mind, like, why would you have any god for anything? I mean, what does your god do, I mean, the gods didn't do anything back then either. There wasn't any god doing anything. There was nothing. I mean, the god was the same thing it's always been. It was a building somewhere, some people in a building, people's imagination, what they're thinking in their spare time, stuff that's written down. This is all what the God is. So, but anyways, he imagines that the God is standing next to him. And the God says, as if he didn't know, the God says, I am Hashem, the God of your father Abraham's house, the God of Isaac's house. The ground on which you are lying, I will assign to you and your offspring. Okay, that's really clear. Now, the line before is not clear. It's a weird dream, but we're just going to move on. Now, here's the promise. But, again, this is not happening in reality. There's no Jacob. There's no God. There's just this sentence. And the sentence is meant to mean something, not just to you, the Jew who's reading it, like me, or my Jewish community. It means something for all the generations that Jews read this. And this is why Jews feel such a strong affinity to the land of Israel. It's because it's in the text. It's like that's where Israel is. It's in the text. And then when you add Christians to that, then Christians are like, oh, see, the Jews are the promised people. And the Jews have to be in Israel in order for Jesus to come or something like that. And Christians get into this added layer to the Jewish text because they've got their own trip. But for me as an atheist, so I'm just reading this and I'm just kind of trying to deconstruct this part. So here it says, it's basically making three claims. It's basically making two claims. Well, just one really. And this is really the point of the dream too. So it's like they're trying to get the message through in the Torah, but they're saying it in like 10 different ways. Like all the messages, they're the same message. The message is that you have the land of Israel. It's promised to you from God. And here's all the different ways to show that this was promised to you from God. But it's only your land if you follow the commandments. So, like I said, all this stuff is here in the text. It's not, there doesn't even need to be a God in the text. There is, because that's what people want. People want the text to keep the story moving. But there doesn't really need to be a God in it because it's really very transactional. I mean, this is really kind of it's both a kind of a crude attempt at ethics and kind of a lukewarm attempt at morality and definitely a strong statement out about justice, which I think is one of the strongest parts of the Torah. And then a little bit of mythology, some creation stories, just like things people are used to from that time period. But it's very transactional. It's about the land, and it's about ethics. So I mean, and it's really clear. It just keeps on saying it over and over again. So it's like it doesn't matter that he's having a dream. The dream doesn't mean anything. What matters is that they say that this is the land, and then they provide like some kind of intergenerational connection to it to make it seem like the land is it's like where I live I live in a small town, but the town that I live in, people have lived here for a long time. Like some people upwards of almost 200 years. Not quite, but pretty close. And they're like, "Oh, I'm a fifth generation so and so." It's like it's a big deal around here. People are like, in my little town, people brag and they think it's a big deal that they've been here, their parents, their grandparents, their great grandparents, it's like it just goes on. And it's like that's just part of human nature. People are always going to have some obsession with their families and what their families mean to them. And there's a lot of family stuff in here. And it's like, I respect that. I understand that that's just a human trait. It's something that people do. I mean, I do think that there's a way that you can look at society that's different from that, but I also understand that that's just one of the ways that people do look at the world and how they understand it. So it's really easy. This is all really easy. I mean, this isn't even hard. But it's not supposed to be hard. It's supposed to be easy because it has to be something really simple that you can sort of digest. But, one of the things that Jewish folks have done, which is so clever and it's so interesting, is that they've taken the text and they've poured over every crevice of it and they've expanded its meaning through lots and lots of commentary and through working and manipulating the text and kind of just really, really working with it. Trying to draw stuff out that like you wouldn't think was there. And it's very interesting. I mean, it's a very interesting way to have a religion because it keeps you on your toes. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, there isn't any atheism in the Torah. There's no place in the Torah where it's just like there is no God. This is not, the Torah doesn't answer any questions that you have as an atheist or that I have. It's about itself. I personally think everybody's an atheist and that the text is just, you can't avoid it. You can't avoid the implications of atheism. If you're really an atheist, then when you look at the text deconstructs itself because it has no place to go. It stays where it is and it kind of invites you in. The trick to, this is just my advice. If you happen to be someone like me who is indoctrinated in religion and you have a religious brain like I do, the reason that I do this is because I've got a religious brain. When I was in school, I was bullied and I was marginalized and I was made to feel like I was not worthy to be in my community. Like anywhere I went, when I was in grade school, when I was in high school, I mean, I was always made to feel like I was worthless. And religion was really great for me because it made me feel like I was worth something, you know, and it made me feel really valued. So I grew this attachment to religion because I found religious people to be really nice. And, my family was religious. And religious people were curious about why we exist and why we're here on earth. And they have a lot of things in their religion that are really good things that they do, like feeding the poor, clothing the people who need things, helping people out, doing good stuff. That's great. So they do those good things. And I really like religion because religion talks about stuff that I think people need to do, like strive for justice. But when I realized there was no God, it just about broke my heart. It completely broke my heart. The reason it broke my heart wasn't because I'd lost God, but I'd lost like this vital connection I had to the security I wanted in the world. I mean, I'd suffered a lot of trauma from my childhood of being bullied and being marginalized. And religion gave me a place. It gave me a place that I belonged. And it's so hard if you've done that. Then like when I turned 18 and I started studying this stuff and I was just like, "Oh my god, this is crazy." People who maybe were better adapted, who didn't have as many emotional insecurities as I had, probably could have figured it. They've probably figured this out when you were 5 years old. Maybe you figured this out when you were 10 or something. I don't know. I didn't figure it out. I believed all of it until I was about 18, and that's when it all started to fall apart for me. But I had already been indoctrinated, and I already had this deep emotional attachment to this because it had given me the thing that I didn't get from my schools. When I was in the different schools in my life, I never got anything that validated me. And the only place I got it was in religion. So, I didn't get it from atheists. I got it from religious people. So that's why I still care about religion, even though, I know that it's not real. But it's still, it has a lot in it that I still value anyways, even though it's not real. But also, I mean, I think that these texts are fundamentally atheist texts. I mean, I think that we're all going through these traumas. I mean, I think that a lot of the reason that these texts were written is because people have always had a lot of trauma. I mean, throughout history, people have always had lots of trauma because the world is just such a terrible place. I mean, just look at what's happening right now in the world. I mean, it's such a terrible place. We have, at this point in history right now, we have a president who's, I mean, he's not really a president, but we have this man who's threatening the security and well-being of like over 10 million people. He's threatening to, and again, I know that this will get dated very quickly, but at the time that I'm recording this, there's a man who's the president of the United States, and he's not any kind of a religious person. He doesn't have any values that reflect anything in this text. I mean, his values are the antithesis of what this text stands for. And he's going to do a lot of harm to a lot of people, and he's going to do things that are the exact antithesis of where this text points you if you really read it. So, anyways, and that's another good reason to read the text because you can learn something. It doesn't really matter in the end if there's a God or not. I mean, you still have to figure out what's fair in the world. You still have to figure out what's justice. And you have to do it for yourself, you have to figure it out for yourself. You can't just have some set of rules that just tells you what to do. Even though this text gives you lots and lots of rules, the rules, they matter. You need to follow the rules if you can, if that's what you want, if you want to follow that religion. Well, you don't have to do it. Never mind. I sound ridiculous. I sound like an idiot. Hi there, I'm back. I just took a little break. So we're in Genesis chapter 8. We've only gotten 3 or 4 verses in, but that's okay. So let's move on to the next verse. I think I've talked about that one enough. Verse 15. Remember, I am with you. I will protect you wherever you go, and will bring you back to this land. I will not leave you until I have done what I promised you. So again, there's the promise, there's the transaction. So that's the transactional piece of the story. It's interesting that a religion that was kind of created out of basically an indigenous Canaanite religion 3,000 years ago and sort of evolved over a few hundred years, by the 3rd or 4th century BCE would get to the point where this is what the priority is. My own take on the language here in the text, and really my take on the Torah at the time, was that this is just my own completely off the top of my head theory. But my thought is that around the 200s, there was, I think that a lot of what we have inherited in terms of religion in the West comes from a couple of really tumultuous periods in our most recent past. And I think that these texts were written around a time when establishing a firm cultural identity was a really difficult thing to do. Because this is kind of these texts are being redacted and being compiled during a very chaotic time in ancient history, at a time when the Roman Empire was on the ascent. Not that there were always empires around, but there was nothing like the Roman Empire. And the degree to which, but even in the past, just looking at the past, because the past of how these cultures had to engage with the dominant powers around them had a big role in shaping them. And so even though the Roman Empire was the one that I think really was kind of a backstory on the text, there's also a backstory of the Babylonian Empire, and there's probably a more ancient memory of the Akkadian and Sumerian. So, but the text itself is really trying to create a claim to the land through the promise of a deity. So there's this deity, and the deity doesn't have any shape or any form, but this deity has promised the land. And so the people writing the text, they're engaged in speculation about ideas for how to preserve their claim on a land that they are obviously familiar with and have a deep connection with. So the Jews at the time who were writing this, they were probably in Judea, they were probably in Israel, writing this. They may have been in Alexandria or someplace else nearby. Parts of this, we don't know where everything was written, so it's all speculation. Most of it's speculation. But, obviously the people writing this felt either while they were in the land that they had a real connection to the land, or they were away from the land, but they knew that's where their people were from, and that's where their story is from. And so they have a connection with it that way. And they're trying to memorialize it in their text. I think that's all this is. It's just, they're just trying to memorialize their connection to the land in their text. Anyway, so let's keep on going. Jacob awoke from his sleep. So there you go. That means the whole thing was a dream. But he's dreaming the same thing that, Isaac. Well, I don't remember if the divine shows up with Isaac. Maybe he does. But he definitely shows up with Abraham and says the same thing to Abraham. Jacob woke up from his sleep and said, "Surely Hashem is present in this place, and I did not know it." Shaken, he said, "How awesome is this place? This is none other than the abode of God, and that is the gateway to heaven." So, there's a lot of God here. This is very God-filled. Now, what kind of a God is it? Okay, so let's look at this. He woke up from his sleep. So, he believes that his sleep is a message from God. Now, let's think about this for a minute. In the story, there's been a God who told Noah to build an ark in front of Abraham, basically set an entire city on fire and killed some of Abraham's relatives, told Abraham himself to murder his own son, made everybody not be able to speak the same language, created the whole earth and all the animals. There's this God in the story who's clearly a supernatural, omnipotent being. Maybe not omnipotent. I would not say omnipotent. But supernatural, above the laws of nature. Definitely. So why would this God, who's above the laws of nature and can do all of these things, not just tell Jacob whatever he wants to tell him? Why does Jacob need to have a dream in order to talk to his God, the same God that goes around talking to everybody? The reason is because it's not about Jacob. Jacob's not real. The reason is this is supposed to connect you with your own dreams. And it's supposed to make you think maybe your dreams are messages from God, or it's meant to connect you with the story by drawing you into the character. So you're supposed to feel a closer connection with the character because you dream in the same way that the character dreams. And if there is a difference, well, I don't know if there's a difference or not. That's not the point. It's not about the difference. It's about the similarities. So you do something similar to this character so you can understand his position. And so this is another tool that you put on. It's like an article of clothing, really. Your articles of faith. It's like another article of clothing that you put on so that you can carry the story. Because the story is really about you. You're the person carrying the story all the way through. In Jewish tradition, you really do. Because you read it so many times. Jews read the Torah over and over again every year. So you're really carrying the story. The story really is, in a lot of ways, the story is the tradition. So, anyways, we keep on going. Shaken, he said, "How awesome is this place? There is none other than the abode of God, and that is the gateway to heaven." So there's heaven. Okay, there's heaven. So the last time, it just said in his dream, that he was just going to the sky. So Now it says heaven. So that just gets really complicated. I mean, it's one thing to have a stairway that goes to the sky. It's like, at least you know what the sky is. You can see the sky. I mean, there's the sky and there's a stairway going up it. It's like, I can sort of imagine it. It'd have to be a really big stairway. You know, something like, what's the towers in Dubai? Whatever the towers are. You know, those really tall buildings. It's like, I can imagine a tall stairway going up to the sky. You know, kind of like a space elevator or something. But now here it is, he says heaven. And it's like, so it's changed it. I mean, even though there's messengers coming up and down the stairway, messengers of God, whatever. But it still doesn't say heaven. But now it says heaven. So now what on earth is heaven? What does that mean? What is heaven? You know? I mean, Christians know what heaven is. But Jews, what is heaven? You know, there isn't any heaven. Not in the Torah. There's no heaven. You know, there's not a whole chapter of the Torah called heaven. There isn't even a Parsha called heaven. You know, there's no heaven. I mean, there's a heaven right here. There's a couple of other places where the heavens, you know, heavens shows up as a word. Now here it's just heaven, it's not heavens. So here it's singular. In other places in the Torah, there's heavens, plural. But here it's just heaven. It doesn't say what heaven is, though. So then you just, oh boy, this just makes it really complicated. Because it's changed it from a simple, there's a dream, you're connecting with the person because he dreams, and then he has a special connection to the place. All of that, you know, even as an atheist, you can kind of deal with it, sort of. But as soon as you add the word heaven in, it's like, well, what does that mean? So now you've opened up a whole nother can of worms. But I really don't have the time to just go into this tonight. I mean, I kind of want to, but it's too complicated. I mean, in Judaism, at least my understanding of Jewish tradition, there isn't really a heaven and there isn't really a hell. I mean, Judaism doesn't really say anything about another, you know, I mean, it doesn't, it's not Greek, it's not Christian, it's not Hindu. So it's not like, it's not Hindu or Buddhist, like where you just keep on getting reincarnated. I mean, maybe you could find that in the Torah. I mean, actually, there are Jews who do believe in something similar to that. But they're all, you know, post Middle Ages when their traditions got started. So in the Torah, it's just not there. So it's like, I don't know why Jacob's talking about heaven, but he is. So let's just move on. I just wanted to kind of point that out. Early in the morning, Jacob took the stone he had put under his head and set it up as a pillar and poured oil on the top of it. So, you know, I mean, I guess the first thing I'm wondering is how big is this stone? Because if it's just a stone that he slept on because it was a pillow, then it can't be that big. I mean, how big of a pillar can you set up? I mean, are we talking like, you know, some shrimpy little thing, like 12 inches tall? Is that the pillar? Or a pillar, you know, is it like this big thing? What is it? I mean, I do know this, though. In the ancient world, people set up pillars all the time. And the pillars were actually stand-ins for a tree. And they were actually places that were symbols of the goddess. So Jacob is marking this spot as someplace sacred. And he's also connecting it both with the God that he had his dream in, and through his actions, he's also connecting it with the goddess. So his actions are balanced because he's got a god and a goddess here. You know, in the ancient world, it's balanced. Early in the morning, Jacob took the stone he had put under his head, set it up as a pillar, and poured oil on top of it. So I guess that's what you do. It's like the Torah is telling you how you dedicate or consecrate a rock that you want to stick up in the air. When I read this, I think about Cadillac Ranch. I I just do it. Cadillac Ranch is like it's this weird thing in the Texas Panhandle. I mean, if you have ever driven cross country, like I have so many times, um, if you're taking Interstate 40, you go across the Texas Panhandle, and there's this part of it near Amarillo, and it's called Cadillac Ranch. And there's these Cadillacs, and they're sticking in the ground. They're upright. So somebody like stuck one in the ground, but somehow they got a crane or something, and they lifted it up in the air, and then part of it's buried in the ground and sticking up. And when I see this, like he erected a pillar, that's what I think of. So, anyways, yep. And they poured oil on it. He named that site Beth El, but previously the name of the city had been Luz, or Light. Ooh, that's interesting. Oh, there's my sister. Hello, I'm back. So let's keep on going. We've got maybe 13 minutes left. I should say, I have about maybe 12 minutes left on this recording. But I'm proud of myself because I'm actually making it through more Torah and I'm doing less time going over the basics or doing a lot of ad hominem. Almost everything I'm saying is directly related to what the text is. So I'm very excited about that. But let's keep on going. Verse 20. Jacob then made a vow, saying, if God remains with me, protecting me on this journey that I am making, and giving me bread to eat and clothing to wear, and if I return to my father's house, Hashem shall be my God. So, again, it's transactional. I mean, this is more, I think that this is more the world that everyday people inhabit. This is a transactional situation. And, Jacob, he's had a dream. So you're supposed to connect with the dream because you can dream too. And there's a connection to the land, because whoever was writing this really wanted to use this religious text to really make a territorial claim to a land that, was probably their land going back a long time. And they just wanted to preserve that in their text. Or maybe it wasn't their land. Maybe they decided they wanted it. Who knows? Who knows how people get land? People get land all kinds of weird ways. Mostly they're just born and they get it. But this is an interesting question, though. It really is an interesting question, though, because it gets you thinking about, do you have some sort of special connection to some kind of land? I think that, so, I'm filming this in America. And I guess I was raised with this idea that, like, the whole land was a land that I could access, because I've been born in this just luxurious time in the existence of Homo sapiens. Where we have cars and they drive all over. You can drive anywhere in the country, legally that you can go to. You can drive anywhere you want, uh, relatively. You can drive anywhere you want. You can see the land wherever you want to go. And, it's as diverse as it's like Florida, Texas, Maine, Alaska, Washington, California, Colorado. The land, it's pretty amazing. And here you can see the land by car, so you can just drive all over it. I don't know if we'll be able to do that in the future. I hope so. But, I also know that we've used up a lot of resources just to have this lifestyle. But I mean, land, it doesn't, I don't know. It's like, I mean, where I live, I'm out west, and most of the land out here is just empty. I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've been out in remote western US, and it's like, it's 100 miles between towns, and the next town you're getting to has like 6 buildings in it and a gas station. You know, there's mostly a lot of nothing. But that's our land, anyone who's American, that's something you get, whether you deserved it or not. It's something that you get anyways. So it's like, I don't know, it's like land. I guess I've never really thought about it. I mean, it's the modern era. It's, past modern. And I don't think of land as a benefit, I know that all of the land is constantly changing because geology is changing land and it's moving everything around, and the weather effects and everything. It's land doesn't mean, and we're in space now, so it's like we know now that this is most of what's around us is outer space and it's mostly empty. I mean, we have a much better understanding of what land is. But here in this text, the land is everything. The land is the whole point of the story, is that the people are connected to the land. So that's what this is. So, but it's transactional. So Jacob's trying to make a deal. He's trying to make a deal. It's really kind of interesting because he's sort of trying to make a deal in the same way that he made a deal with his brother to get his brother's birthright. And the way he tried to make deals with Laban, he's trying to make a deal here with the divine, which is something in his head. Although in Judaism, they also think it's real. So if you're devout, then you think this is real. So he's trying to make a deal with God. It's interesting. Anyways. But it's transactional. I mean, this God has to do something for him, which I suppose is also, that's what people expected. That's basically what people expect from their gods, isn't it? People expect their God to do something for them. Like they pray to their God, and they want a good surgery. They want that their loved ones don't die. They want to get some money, they want to have a nice trip, whatever. People want something transactional, so they pray to their God because they think they're going to get it. And that's kind of what Jacob's doing, but he's not really praying. He's really kind of negotiating. He's actually not praying at all. He's negotiating. And then he says, the last verse, "And this stone which I have set up as a pillar shall be God's abode. And of all that you give me, I will set aside a tithe for you." So again, there's a lot of stuff there. It's complicated. This is also, so here's a description about a tithe. Now, why does Jacob need to tithe for God? What does God possibly need from Jacob's tithe? Nothing. He doesn't need it. In the story, he's God. In the story, the God made everything in the universe. So why would the God need Jacob's tithe? Obviously, God doesn't need Jacob's tithe. The people who wrote the story need Jacob's tithe. Either the people who wrote the story or the priests who read the story, but I think it tells you right there who wrote the story. The people who wrote the Torah are the people who need the tithe. Those are the, because they just stuck it in there. It's like Jacob, said all this and he got it from the God. And now Jacob's going to tithe because of that. And he's going to give it to the God. But, since the God doesn't need it, I guess he'll give it to his representatives, the people who run the temple, which doesn't exist at the time. But that's who it's going to. And the God is going to live in the pillar. So that's where the God's going to live. The God's going to live in the pillar. But, again, sacred place. So, all right, I got 3 minutes left, the home stretch. So, Jacob keeps on going. I'll just kind of summarize what's next. Jacob keeps on going, and there's some flocks, and he meets some people, and he meets Rachel, and he falls in love with Rachel, and he falls in love with he marries Rachel, and then he marries Leah. It's basically the story of Rachel and Leah. So it's a whole thing. Like, I'm missing the whole thing because of my long commentaries. So sorry about that. You'll just have to read it on your own. Maybe I'll get to it next year. Anyways, my name is Emma, and I've been doing this Atheist Torah study. So I want to thank you very much for joining me. We've been reading Parsha. See, I think this is Vayetzei. Let's see, which one is this? Maybe it's Vayetzei 28:10. There it is. We've been reading portion Vayetzei, Genesis chapter 28, and just kind of looking at it through an atheist lens. So, thanks again so much for joining me. If you want to find atheist Torah study, you can go on TikTok and look for atheist. I'm on all the social media. I'm on TikTok and YouTube. So you can go to TikTok or YouTube and look for the keyword atheist Torah study. If you want to write to me, feel free to send me an email at atheisttorahstudy@gmail.com. And again, thanks so much for joining us for Parsha Vayetzei here on Atheist Torah Study. Thanks so much and have a great day.